Welcome back to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a podcast series where we look to get under the skin of all things sales performance management and motivation to understand what makes our wonderful recruitment of industry tick. Today, I'm sitting down with a name that many in the industry will know, James Osborne, founder and CEO of the Recruitment Network. But the thing about James is, he's not just the TRN guy, he's got a really interesting background as well. Did you know, for example, that he started out doing scuba diving around the world before working on boats in Australia? Bet you didn't. And then just like many of us, he happened to fall into recruitment after that. We have a really good chat today about two topics we haven't covered on this podcast before. The first one being about the importance of personal purpose and identifying what that is. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. And the second one being all about this belief that James holds that right now the industry is going through a revolution. Not quite the take up your pitchforks and torches kind of revolution, but one where things are changing drastically and those who don't keep up will get left behind. You'll really enjoy this one. So without further ado, let's get into it with James Osborne. Right, well, James, absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for giving us your time. For those who don't know you, you often operate behind the scenes, it feels, at things like TRN. So why don't you give us the run through about you, your career? What is it that you do?
Okay, I'll keep it short and sweet because it does go on a little bit and it gets quite dull. Starting off, my background was I lived on a boat and travelled the world teaching scuba diving and sailing. Ended up living on a boat up in the Whitsunday Islands in Australia. Moved down to Sydney, worked on some boats in Sydney, fell into recruitment, got a job as a temp in a recruitment company. Did work my way up in that business, got sponsored, became a sales director in that business. I was then headhunted by a lady called Therese Rain, who was the wife of the Prime Minister at the time, Kevin Rudd. Did some work with her business, had a really successful run over in Australia, came back to the UK probably about 18 years ago now. And ever since I've been acting as a coach, non-exec director, advisor to recruitment companies, which then manifested itself into me launching the Recruitment Network about 7 years ago, which is our large global community for recruitment business leaders and advisors. And we all hang out together and help each other maximize productivity, performance, and profitability, our three sort of favorite things.
Lovely. Very nice. Good intro as well. I like that. Quite succinct, but got a lot of detail in there. The scuba diving thing was an interesting one. What the hell led you down that path in the first place?
I love the water. I live for the water. So I do anything I possibly can on, under, in the water. So that's my happy place. And the great thing about scuba diving is that when you're underwater, you can't hear anyone, which is wonderful. So it's just you and yourself, which is great. So no, it was my passion. I loved it. And then it ended up becoming my trade. So I worked around the world, lived on boats, had some great times working the Caribbean, all over the world. It was superb. So it was a lot of fun. Gave me a chance to see the world, learn a lot about culture, learn a lot about people, learn a lot about traveling, and that sort of stuff. Something I really did now.
And you fell into recruitment, just like it seems every single person that I have in this podcast, I tend to ask, how did you get your start in recruitment? And it always is a case of I fell into it. A mate mentioned a job was going there once. I was applying for a bunch of jobs and they came back to me. It seemed like the great thing to go into after university, for example. How did you happen to actually fall into it? What happened as your story as the gateway into it?
It was really simple. I was working on some boats in Australia, and I had to basically make a bit more money. I didn't have enough money, so a friend of mine said, "Go and talk to this recruitment company. They might be help you." I've got a friend there, so I went in there. I got my first temp job was working at Sydney Airport, and I was doing the night shift because it was double pay. And I was weighing the rubbish in the airport. So basically, every evening they'd send down all the rubbish down this chute, down to this basement area. And so about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I get it with a couple of mates, and we sit there, we'd unravel it, see what's inside it, write down what was inside it, weighed it, and then that was it. And that was my job, auditing rubbish at Sydney Airport. So, and then I obviously made some good money out of that, which was great. On the night shift, but it only lasted for so long. I didn't make it that long. And then I ended up getting a job inside the recruitment company as a temp. And I remember the owner of the company coming down. It was a big global group. He came over to Australia. I met him and we had a chat and got on really well. Next thing you know, I got made a sales director there. They sponsored me, like I say in the country, which is quite handy, obviously, when you have a visa. It all went from there, really. So it was, one of those classic ones. You never really plan it. Well, that's not true. I actually spoke to someone the other day who actually said when they went to school, they actually had their career advice. They said, I want to be a recruiter. I've never heard that before in my life. Nice to hear, I think, actually, when people actually think of it as a sort of a career of choice, which I think it should be for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, before we get into the main topics of today, and I'll introduce those in a second, it's a really interesting thought, that, because I know there's a lot of folks that I know in the more general like sales market, in software sales, for example, and they always say, there is never a place where you can go to study how to do sales, for example. It's not a university course that you can take, and people tend to just happen upon these things. And do you think to a degree there's this association with sales and recruitment in general as well, admittedly here, that people kind of look at it and go, you know, it's a little bit underhand. They're just trying to make a quick buck. They just want to make money, and therefore no one aspires into it. Whereas you hear from some people and they say, actually, I really enjoy the fact that I get to change people's lives, that they get to go into jobs and I've helped them get there and show them what the right path forward is for them. Do you think a lot of that is around the stigma that's attached to these kind of roles as to why no one really says, I want to go and be a recruiter or a salesperson one day?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we don't teach children at school sales skills, because I think it's one of the most important skills you have in any job that you do. It's one of the most important skills. Sales does have stigma attached to it, so there's always the bad salesperson that everyone's faced and seen when you're buying a car or whatever it is that you were buying. I'm not knocking car salesmen, but there's an example.
Even you're feeding into the stigma now, seeing to fall into car salespeople.
Damn, I did it. But no, but the reality is, I mean, sales has a stigma to it because salespeople naturally are quite proactive. Let's call it that, and some people don't like that. So I think it has a stigma to it. Recruitment is a sales industry, 101. There's no getting away from it, no changing that whatsoever. The reason why I think recruitment is a career of choice is exactly for the reason that you just said, because on one side it's sales, and sales generally means you can make good money, and that's great. And on the other side, generally, we do make a difference. You know, and it's one of those things when you say it to people, go, yeah, really? You're just saying that because it sugarcoats the fact of what you are. The reality is we do change people's lives, and we do enable organizations to move forward. There's not one company in the world that can grow and achieve their objectives without the right people around them, whether it be techies to create tech to avoid having people in your business or whatever it is. We need people within our companies, and I think it's a massively important industry. Really interesting as well. I think it's a real flag bearer as well for the economy. So I think, you know, I often look at what a lot of people look at the recruitment sector and look at data and recruitment and go, actually, that's a real flag bearer for what's about to happen in the economy. So I think it's a massively important industry that often gets either overlooked or gets belittled a little bit. But I think when organizations start realizing how important their talent is in their business and how they need recruiters to help them do that, is when they start to realize actually it's a really bloody important industry.
Yeah, I love that as well. It's a line that I say a lot. Like, naturally, you know, we speak to a lot of new investors who would love to invest in the company one day. And they always ask, you know, okay, so why recruitment? What is it that's special about it? And one thing I often point back to is the fact that it is the first to feel the effects of any kind of economic downturn and one of the last to recover. It's a tough market to sell into for that exact reason. But like you say, it's a very good flag bearer of if companies are nervous, they stop hiring, the recruitment industry feels the effects. They're starting to feel optimistic again. They're starting to make hires. They're wanting to grow. The recruitment industry sees the effects. And I do think it's a really good benchmark, like you say, for a lot of other spaces out there in terms of how the overall economy is doing. So good reflection there. I like that one. It also kind of ties back to what we were speaking about before around the whole, you know, wanting to be a recruiter or wanting to work in sales, because one of the things that you mentioned earlier is knowing the importance of your personal purpose. That was one topic which we'll go into. And the second one, I love this as a line that someone comes onto this podcast and says is, you know, our industry is going through a revolution. It's like, whoa, it's quite a strong line, actually. So those are the two topics we'll go through today. Any order you want to approach those in? We could start with the purpose one, given you mentioned it earlier, if you like.
Go for it. I'm very happy to.
All right, then. So, I mean, you tell me, you got to tell me about this one now then. So you think personal purpose is a really important thing. Being aware of that, no doubt, has a big impact on your life as well. And give me your primer as to why you think it's so important.
All right, there's a load of backdrops to this, but I think if I take a step back for a second, if I look at some of the most successful people I've ever met who have a sales influence in their role, or a sales component to their role, they are fundamentally driven by something. That's the thing. And when you look under the bonnet of that, it's generally driven by something that's really important to them. I know we often talk in businesses about creating amazing strategic visions and mission statements, all that type of stuff, and getting alignment with that. The reality, at the end of the day, ultimately, people are driven by their purpose, that one thing that drives them more than anything else, the one thing that is so important to them. And everybody is completely different. Some people's purpose is all about money and it's about, you know, accumulating wealth and flash things and that type of stuff. Nothing wrong with that. That's what they want. That's what they want. For some people, it's actually really making a positive difference to people's lives, a tangible, measurable difference to people's lives. Everybody has a different purpose. But when you identify what that purpose is, as a leader, as an example, you can really, really drive greater performance in people, which I think is hugely important. But I think what a lot of people don't really like to do in our industry enough of, I think social media drives this, is that sometimes you're not really allowed to talk about your purpose. Because if it's not the obvious things like make money, be successful, grow, and that sort of stuff, then you're deemed as probably weak in our industry. It's a complete fallacy. It's completely wrong. And I think some of the best people I know, who are the most successful people I know, have very subtle, nuanced purposes that have nothing to do with monetary value whatsoever. Can you be a salesperson that's not driven by money? Yeah, 100% you can. You can be a damn good salesperson not driven by money, but you need to be true to your purpose. Otherwise, it just never works. And otherwise, you're chasing something that you don't necessarily want. Now, you look at classic incentive schemes and in many sales environments, it's all about the check, right? It's like do more sales, open up an envelope, there's more cash inside, and keep going, keep going, keep going. And that works for some people to some extent, but for a lot of people, it just doesn't. And I think identification of your own purpose as a lead identification of your people's purpose, I think is hugely important, but it's often not what people think it is. Now, what drives me, what drives you will be completely different, I'm sure. Maybe aligned, maybe different, I don't know. But they probably will be different, but they are generally aligned to one thing that really drives you, or something that happened in your life at some point that was the trigger for that purpose, whatever it is. And when you identify that, I think that's a game changer for anyone.
I love that. And admittedly, I think our purposes weren't aligned so far as mine doesn't call me to the water in the same way that it does you. But I think it's a very, very valid point, because I think about actually something that Ryan McCarve said, the late Ryan McCarve, bless him, actually once said to me. He was like, he said, when guys come and work for me, the first thing I'm asking is what they really want. And they'll say, oh, I want to make a lot of money. And they'll pause and be like, no, what is it you really want? Because money is a vehicle to get what you want, right? So what else calls to you, whether it's to be able to buy your own home and feel safe and secure in life, whether it's to be able to buy a flash watch or a flash car, for example, so you have that social status of looking successful, whether it's being able to pay off your parents' mortgage, whatever it might be, there's always something that sits above money. And one of the best bits of advice that I've heard over the years is, if you find a salesperson that's really driven by money, ask them why they want the money. What is it they want it for? It's not just about taking home a big check, and maybe seeing 5 figures on a commission check feels great. That's about you and your, value of self-worth is, I know that I can achieve that. But there's always something people want that money for beyond just the number sitting in their bank account, and trying to lean into that is really important. And perhaps that's also a gateway towards their personal purpose, right?
100%. Totally agree with that. I think, Ben, if you can, I think, there's been a lot of talk over the last few years, the last 18 months in particular, about people's well-being and mental state and that type of stuff. And, the number one reason I think why people have real problems when it comes to their mental well-being is because they're not living their true purpose. They're living someone else's purpose, or a fake purpose, or a pretend purpose that you're meant to have because that's what the persona says. And it's an absolute load of rubbish. It really, really is. And I think it's quite dangerous as well. That's the problem with things like social media, because we do portray this sort of environment where you've got to keep chasing and chasing and chasing. And sometimes people are chasing the wrong thing. And sadly, I think that has a negative effect.
I forget what that is. It's ikigai, isn't it? It's Japanese.
Yeah, ikigai.
Their whole thing is like, when you find something to do in life, something you can get paid for, something that you're good at, something that you like doing, and something society needs, and those 4 things, they all align in terms of what you do in your job, then fantastic. You found your happy places, it might be, right? That purpose feels fulfilled. If you had to kind of pause and share, if you don't mind sharing, what your personal purpose is, what do you think it is that drives you every single day to get out of bed in the morning? And it's not money, obviously.
No, it's really, really simple. I'm obsessed by experiences with my family, and that's it. And it sounds like a mad thing to say, but I don't really have massive desires for flash things. It's not really me. I have real desires to spend lots of time having real quality experiences with my family, because I absolutely adore my family. And a number of years ago, I lost my first son. So my first son passed away, Toby, when he was quite young. And when you go through a moment like that, it really reminds you of actually just what is important here. You mentioned Ryan a minute ago, sort of stuff. It's just like jeepers. How many messages do you need to have thrown at you before you start realizing that life is really bloody short. And there's no car, there's no house, there's no anything that can replace time and quality time. And for me, I love spending time doing stuff. I just love doing stuff and experiencing everything and anything I can. That probably came from my traveling experiences, but so that's it. So my purpose is really simple: is how much time can I create with my family to do experiences? And I'm not willing to work all my life, so eventually I can go and do that, because I'll just miss the whole point of it. So I work my backside off. I work bloody hard, as many people do. And my life is, and we had a conversation with someone the other day about work-life balance. They said, you work really, really hard, James, and really long hours. You don't have a work-life balance. And I said, you have absolutely no idea, because I do. Because I go to just about every single rugby match, every single cricket match with my kids. We have dinner every night together as a family without fail. So there's some little experience like that are really important to me. Don't get me wrong, when my kids are asleep or they're monging out on their phones, whatever else they're doing at 10 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, that's when I'll catch up with my work and whatever it might be. So I'll do the hours, I'll do the shift, but I'll do it around my family and around those experiences. So that's it. As soon as that stops, it's just not worth it as far as I'm concerned, because then you're just working and chasing something that may never turn up. Madness.
It comes back to the classic saying of like living to work or working to live, right? It's very much working to live. And for you, living is experiences, right?
Yeah, but if you love your work, that is part of the experience. I mean, I love what I do. I genuinely love my work. Someone said, "No, when are you going to retire?" I go, "Why would I retire? You know, if I retire, I'm worried my brain will probably just seize up. It will just go like that." So I've got no intentions to retire whatsoever. I might change the volume of work I'm doing over a period of time, but I've got no plans of retiring. I don't want to retire. So, but if you love what you do, you generally love what you do, then that is surely is a work-life balance. And don't get me wrong, we have stressful moments at work and all that, like anyone else does, and that sort of thing. But majority of the time, I love what I do. So why would I not want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do 2 or 3 hours of really cool stuff on my laptop before the rest of my family are awake on a Saturday morning? Of course I would. It's a perfect time for me to be able to do that. And that's what I like to do. I think that's a work-life balance in my world. For other people, they go, you maybe work too long hours. Then, okay, well, that's your work-life balance, how you choose it. But for me, I'm perfectly balanced, I think, from that point of view.
It's definitely a thing I saw on LinkedIn a good couple of years ago now, was work-life balance is personal to everyone. Everyone knows what that split looks like. As long as there's some time for both in there, then grand. And if a lot of your fulfillment comes out of being successful at work, fair enough. That's where your kind of time lies, right? And that's where you want to put it, which I completely understand. I imagine probably the piece around like personal purpose is a little bit harder for those that are maybe a little bit younger, still trying to find themselves, not quite sure where they fit in the world, right?
Yeah.
What would your advice be to people who maybe sit here and hear that and think, I don't really know what my purpose is. I don't know what motivates me and truly drives me at an intrinsic level that I feel compelled to go and do something because I believe in it so much. Where do you think you find that?
Yeah, well, so I think you don't find it by dabbling at things. I see a lot of people, and it's not a generational thing at all. I see a lot of people who go through the motions, but they don't really immerse themselves in something. I think if you're going to do something, you immerse yourself in it. You throw yourself full in, and that's when you can really experience something. I think if you're dabbling in stuff, you don't do it. You know, if you've got a job as a salesperson and you're just trying out sales in your first job, then throw your heart and soul into it. Give it a really go. Really put yourself out on the line and really test your ability to be able to be a great salesperson. If you just go through the motions, you're never going to really know if you're a good salesperson or not. Generally, really bad salespeople who don't like selling are the ones who try and do a half-hearted job. And therefore, it never really clicks. You never really make a massive difference. You never experience what it's like for people to phone you up and going, I was told to speak to you because Derry said he had a great experience with you and I need to talk to you, that type of stuff. Until you get to those moments, you never really know what sales is truly about. So I think for everything, you know, my son's going off to university next year and we're having a long conversation about should he go traveling or should he go to university. And I said, if I were you, just go traveling for 10 years if you possibly can and make it work and figure it out later, because ultimately go and taste, experience, feel the world, because that's when you'll learn really what your purpose is all about. You know, I had no idea I was going to work in recruitment. I had no idea I was going to like scuba diving or sailing until I started doing it. I had no idea I was going to end up in the UK. I thought I was going to live in Australia forever. You just don't know. Don't stress about it. Just go with the flow. But if you're going to go with the flow and do stuff, really do it and try stuff out and really throw your heart and soul into it. Then you can really work out whether it is something that's going to be your thing for moving forward, whatever that means.
I love it. Something my dad always said to me is the world's a small place. You can get back home within a day from anywhere in the world. Why would you not go and explore it? And I'm quite glad because my brother a few months ago came back from 3 months doing off around parts of Asia, is around like Vietnam, Cambodia, that sort of thing. And he was one of these people, I think, that were very lost and don't really know what they want to do with their lives yet. I'm not saying he's come back and suddenly had this classic travel person like realization. I know what my calling in life is now, for example. But it just showed the world is a big place and there's very different experiences out there, different cultures, different ways of thinking. And that has really, I think, helped him feel a lot more at peace in himself. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
If you can travel, go and travel, 100%.
One of the biggest skills that I think is missing, or one of the biggest skills is missing, one of the biggest skills you need to have as a salesperson, and I think one of the biggest skills that is missing in much of society is empathy. I think as a race, as a human race, we are useless at being empathetic of the people on the other side. Not in a patronising way, how are you type stuff. It's more about, do you actually understand other people and what they think? I generally don't think people are bad, and it sounds like a real fluffy thing to say now. I just realised I'm going to say this, but I don't generally think people are bad. I just generally think people are very, very different in their thinking. And as soon as people start understanding that, I think the world will come a lot closer together, number one. But think of it from a sales point of view, you know, if you can put yourself in your customer's shoes better than anybody else can, you will always be the number one salesperson in your marketplace. If you can empathize with what they want, how they want it, when they want it, you know, it's transformative. The reason why you talked about before about the sort of the negative connotations with sales is because you've got salespeople out there who just aren't empathetic. they're really happy just to spend all day interrupting people, irrespective of what they might be doing on the other end of the phone. So I might be having flat out busy, load of stuff going on, meetings, I'm stressed out, and a phone call comes in, I pick up the phone and answer it, blah, 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 it's a salesperson trying to do a sales pitch to me. There's no empathy there whatsoever, and they don't even bother asking, is it a good time to talk? They just go straight in with a 30, 60-second sales pitch, and we wonder why sales has a negative connotation. Now, you could argue, well, if you do enough of that, you probably break into enough people and break them down enough to give you the time for a call.
Or you'll catch them at the right time or anything like that, yeah.
But is that the right way to run it? I just don't know. I just don't get it myself. I think it's inefficient and ineffective.
I know something I definitely would have been confused with when I was younger was like this empathy thing. Like I said, if as a young kid I was an empathetic person. I knew if someone was upset that I should be more considerate to them, for example. Therefore I'm empathetic. What's the problem? But I think more as the years have gone by and as the business that I run has grown as well, this empathy thing really comes and like an extends to understanding and putting yourself in the shoes of the other person, right? What's going on in their world right now? What are they worried about? What pains have they currently got? What challenges are they thinking about? What keeps them up at night? And I think it really shows when someone calls or emails and the whole email is full of I, and we, we're the best in the market. We've got loads of customers. Shall I put a time in for us to speak next week? And I'm just like, no, I don't care. If you're sitting there and saying, hey, I've heard from people similar to yourself that you're going through X, Y, and Z challenges right now, and it's a real headache because it leads to A, B, and C. Is that something that you're hearing? Because if so, I think I might be able to help. That's empathy. That's being able to put yourself in their shoes and understand their world that little bit better.
100%. And we all fall into the trap, right? Because we all want to talk about our USPs and talk about the great stuff. We all, we're desperate to say it because it's the stuff that makes us all goosey and makes us feel good. But ultimately, people want to talk about themselves. They want to fix their problems, their pain points, their issues, not yours. So I totally agree. I think it's such an important word on so many scales and so many levels. And again, going back into, are we teaching our kids the right sales skills? Let's teach them empathy at school. I mean, jeepers, what an amazing course that would be. It's going to be better than home economics, surely. Not knocking anyone who's doing home economics, by the way, but my son does it. I think it's a waste of time. There's another story.
I'm sure many people would love to insert many things into the curriculum at school that aren't there today, but that's a whole other topic in itself.
For sure.
If we go on to the second piece that you said, again, that piece around we're going through a revolution as an industry. When you said that, I thought you might say the word AI, but I didn't hear that come out once. So either you're about to tell me, yeah, that is the reason why, or there is something else in your mind. Talk to me then. Why is the recruitment industry going through a revolution today?
Yeah, I just think if you take a step back for a second and just look at everything that's happened, is happening and is going to happen in our world currently in the last 5 to 10 years, moving forward the next 5 to 10 years, I think it's transformative. It's absolutely transformative. And I don't think people are really acceptant of the fact that we are going through such a major transformation. Simple. Let's talk about AI quickly. I'm not going to get heavy on AI because it's a fairly obvious play that's having a massive influence. And I don't think people are really getting it right now because AI is here. It's already in place. You buy a new iPhone, it will have AI built into it. You buy a new computer, it's got AI already built into it. You book a holiday, you now go through an AI agent to help you with that. You add in a bit of strawberry and suddenly now it's thinking for you and telling you what you probably might want to be thinking about in the first place before you even thought about it. I mean, we're going to a whole new place here. It's unbelievable. You add in things like virtual reality and augmented reality, bring a bit of AI into that. I mean, jeepers, what you can do is outstanding. And now we can put on you've got a pair of glasses on. We've got AI hanging around. We've got augmented reality on top of it. I mean, it's transformative. It really, really is. And I think that is just one part of this. That's not the thing that's driving the revolution, but it's one of the things that people are using to help manage the revolution, I suppose, or this evolution that is going on. I think the big change happened over the last 4 to 5 years when you had this blend of the global pandemic. You had a blend of very, very changing in demographics of people within our workplaces. Recruitment comes out, the first time, got 5 different generations within our workplaces. It's very, very different. You've got technology driving how people behave and how people think. You've got all these things going on. You've got to wake up every day, and every day I read the newspaper, and there's another war. There's another whole load of boat people, sadly, who've lost their lives trying to get over to the UK. Whatever it is, I mean, there's so much shit. I don't know if I swear on your podcast, but there's just so much negative shit going on in the world at the moment, and all that is around us. And you factor all that in together. And that drives something which is really important. And that's people's behaviors and responses. And it's people's behaviors and responses that drive everything. They drive our economy. They drive everything. So for me, I think we're going through a huge, huge shift and change right now. And I think it's incredibly exciting. I really, really do. But I think people have got to embrace it, accept it, figure it out in their markets, and then do something about it pretty bloody quick. Don't just wait for it to happen to them. So and I'm not one of those people who say it's a revolution, let's sensationalize this and then come and buy from me type stuff because I've got the product that's going to help you sort of thing. I haven't. We're a peer-to-peer community where we're trying to figure this out all day long by talking with each other and trying to come up with the solutions. And I think we're figuring some stuff out, but we're a long way away from it yet. The reality is this is a very, very different world we're in. You talk about sales. The way people buy and sell today is completely different from what it was 5-10 years ago, and will be completely different again. Automations have had a massive, rocket reach over the last 6 to 12 months. And what's the majority of the world done? They've used automations in essence to throw up all over their client base and their marketplace by these like random AI written, poorly written automations that are spamming it now. So what's now happening? Everyone's just basically going, I can't even bother to look at my inbox anymore. I can't even bother to read WhatsApp anymore. InMail, are you kidding me? It's just like, so then you've got to figure out, so what are you going to do? You're just going to carry on doing more and more of that? Trying to find and work out the clever one-liner that's going to get everyone to open up your email? Or are you going to do something completely different that nobody else is doing, but actually putting the empathy hat on, it's actually what your customers are asking for and what they're wanting right now. So I think it's a revolution, an evolution. I don't care what it is, whether you want to sensationalize it or otherwise, but I think it's a massive shift right now. And I think it's super exciting because it's definitely the next stage of not just recruitment. I mean, this is for lots of organizations and lots of industries.
It's really interesting. I mean, the AI is the big thing everyone will talk about when we think about the changing world that we're in now. If you think about the sort of conversations that you're having with recruitment leaders, with people in TRM, for example, what are the main things that are currently front of mind when you're thinking about this big revolution we go through? What things are you actively having conversations about today?
Well, the number one word we're talking about is optimization. So that's something I'm personally obsessed about. I do have sleepless nights about it. And it's about how do you just make your business 100 times more optimized than it was yesterday? Because AI does that, obviously, in part does that. But there's other things as well. And I look at, one of the things we measure in recruitment companies is conversion, or net contribution conversion, right? So what's your turnover? What's your gross profit? How much of that is dropping to your bottom line? How much cash are you generating and net contribution are you generating? Your clients, how much net profit are you actually making per client? Recruiters, look at league tables in recruiters. Show me a league table of revenue, don't give a damn. Show me a league table of net contribution, I really start caring about that, because actually, sometimes average performers on the revenue chart are actually high performers on a net contribution chart. And so it's all about obsessing about how do you squeeze more out of what you've already got. AI drives that 100%, automations drive that 100%. But the way we're working, the way we run our businesses, the type of relationships we have with our clients, doing lots and lots and lots of spot high volume contingent recruitment that may or may not work type stuff, depending on how the client's feeling today, whether they can bother to get back to you, just doesn't make sense to me in this type of marketplace. Locking customers in on 12 to 18 month contracts where they're embedded and you're embedded with them and you have a partnership agreement in place. So it's partnership, not supplier agreement in place, which is more financially beneficial for them, but more financially beneficial for you when you measure contribution. All of those things is what it's all about to me. So a really, really healthy obsession around optimization. And if you look at a recruitment company, and I was chatting to someone the other day about cars and stuff. I've got an old MG, an MG Roadster thing, and it's lovely. I call her Rosie. She's beautiful. But she spends more time breaking down than she does being driven on the road, sadly. It's just what happens. But I spend my life tinkering and playing with Rosie and trying to get her to be better, get the engine to be more tuned and more optimized, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the same thing with a car, the same thing with a business, the same thing with a desk as a recruiter. If you can make your engine purr, like really, really purr, by optimizing it and making it more efficient and more streamlined, then your business will fly. Your recruiters will fly. And if they're flying, they're part of a winning team. If they're part of a winning team, they're more motivated. They're probably tapping more to their purpose. And so it goes on and so it goes on. So that's the thing for me is optimization. And AI is part of that process.
Like it. I think a big one around optimization that the cynic or the fearful would hear in saying this is, okay, with optimization, there's only so big a market out there. We get more and more optimized. It means we need less people to do the job because the ones that are here are being more efficient, for example. That means there's a big call potentially in terms of employment opportunities in not just recruitment, but many markets around the world. I think we've all probably heard about the not quite self-writing code, but like a Microsoft Copilot, for example, for writing code, things along those sort of lines. What are your thoughts about that in terms of the reduced headcount requirement that may well come from us becoming more efficient as an industry?
I don't think it's going to stop because recruiters don't want it. I think it's going to happen anyway. It is happening anyway. Let's be honest about it. But all that's happening is a shift of the types of jobs. So, we're not going to lose loads and loads and loads of jobs because of AI and tech. What we're going to do is we're going to have super higher performing people with tech sitting behind them as part of their jobs. And that's ranging from construction. There's some amazing stuff around sort of, skeletal outfits and suits that construction workers can wear. They can elongate their working so they can work until they're past 50 because they're physically stronger and able to do so. I mean, that's just brilliant because it's great for the construction firms. It's great for those people who wanted to work. It's great for our healthcare system. Tick, 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 tick. So all these things are all about improvements. And the more improvements there are, the more money that floods into the market to go and build and do other things. And to build and do other things, you need people to go and build and do the other things. They don't just happen. So all this is just a shift and a movement of the types of skills, the type of work, the type of labor, the types of jobs that are out there. Some jobs will become obsolete. Absolute fact. And you can't ignore the fact. But 10 times more jobs will be created because of the change that we're going through. So you just got to adapt and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, there's a whole conversation around, I know, like society at large, if we find ourselves becoming more efficient, if AI eventually evolves to the point that it, as you say, eliminates some jobs entirely, what does that mean for society that's already got a large population, which ultimately won't be able to be sustained? There won't be enough jobs for absolutely everyone. And that is a whole societal and political conversation in itself, which we won't go into in massive depth here. But I understand those that have got a little bit of fear behind that stuff on what does it mean for those in work today if their jobs eventually get eliminated.
Of course, but it's like anything. We're launching a program at the moment called Fit for Purpose, and we're really excited about this. It's about what does a future fit for purpose recruiter look like, and the skills they need to have to be able to do it. In this day and age where there is so much change going on, everybody, whatever job you're in, you should be asking yourself, am I fit for purpose for tomorrow? What skills do I need? Retraining and redeployment has to be one of the most important cluster of words out there at the moment in the labour workforce because we have a global talent shortage. Fact, that's not going to change overnight. So we've got to think about how do we get people who are leaving the workforce to come back into the workforce because they've got new skills to be able to do things. Will AI help somebody who traditionally couldn't do half a bunch of things because it was out of their wheelhouse to now be able to do those things all of a sudden? Does it mean suddenly in countries around the world where they don't have the skills to be able to do it, will AI allow people who are unskilled in certain areas to suddenly have the skills to be able to do jobs they were never able to do before? That's got to be really exciting, right? I mean, so I think it's hugely exciting. You just got to be aware of it and do something about it, not just go, I don't like it. It's hurting and I'm just going to watch it hurt me. Because of course it is. You can't stop the train that's going on around us, but what we can do is decide whether we want to jump on it or not. And I think now's a good time to jump on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate with those questions I was asking earlier because I'm a pretty big fan of, the world is going to change whether you like it or not. Outside of massive riots around the world, AI is going to become a massive part of our overall workflows and the way that we live life. It's going to change. So do you want to change with it and play the hand that you dealt? Or do you want to sit and try and say, I'm not playing this game and then find out what happens when you don't want to get involved, right?
Yeah, but then also bear in mind we've got a different worker demographic as well now. So this is a general comment, but a generalized comment. But there are definitely the younger generation don't necessarily see job for life. They like to job hop. They like to increase their skills. They like to move around, which I think is nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So then again, that creates more challenges that we didn't have 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So these are different challenges we're facing. So everything's just sort of moving. It's like a Rubik's Cube. It's just all moving around a little bit. And you just got to keep playing with the cube and keep moving stuff around so you can figure out how to make the Rubik's Cube look good. I don't know where that analogy went last week. I haven't done Rubik's Cube, but there you go.
Spot on. I love that. Now, it's a really interesting, I'll be giving a good thought about this tonight as well. So on the whole revolution piece, it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. And I'll have to get you back on in about a year and see kind of what else has been spoken about, what else has come out as we look at the future as well, because it's going to be a very interesting 12 to 18 months, I think, especially 100%. With things like the US election about to pass as well. Hopefully then, I know a lot of people have got ideas that things should hopefully start to settle after that point. A lot of the uncertainty is gone, but there's obviously far more things to work through globally before then, I think, anyway.
Well, there is, but also if you look at the OECD, they just released some data that basically saying actually the global economy is settling, is the only way to describe it. And yes, there are nuances and all sorts of pockets of stuff going on and volatility, but the reality is if you just look at the pure data, it's a lot more settled than it was 6, 12, 18 months ago, which is great. So we've got a period, hopefully, of calm, but then depends on obviously what goes on around the world and all these different places where there's issues at the moment. But
spot on, I love it. Cool. Should we go into some quickfire questions? I've got a few to throw at you before we say goodbye.
Oh, have you? Oh, okay, all right.
Always the way. All right. They're quite easy. They're not scary. They're not designed to catch you out. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. First one is, what's your favourite business book that you've read?
Well, I give this book to everyone I know. So It's called, you're going to laugh. It's by Dr. Seuss, and it's called Oh, the Places You'll Go. It was the book I read to my son when he was in hospital before he passed away. So it's obviously a very important book to me. But actually, when you read it, it's the most brilliant business book you'll ever read in your entire life, because it pretty much describes in about 4 or 5 minutes exactly what everyone goes through in an entire life of work. So, Oh, the Places You Go by Dr. Seuss.
Interesting. I've never had anything that kind of like out there before. That's really cool. Love it. Favorite podcast, if you listen to any?
I don't really listen to podcasts regularly, to be honest with you. I try not to be influenced by one or two people, if that makes sense. I'm concerned sometimes that people just jump on a bandwagon and then basically they're influenced by it. So do I like a bit of Stephen Bartlett? Yeah, I do. But if I just listen to Stephen Bartlett all day, I'll become a little mini Stephen Bartlett type stuff. And so I don't really get massively into lots of podcasts. I skirt around lots and lots of different ones.
I mean, your answer to the next question may be very in line with this as well. Favorite people to follow on LinkedIn for inspirational content or good ideas, whatever else it might be?
That was you, Derry.
Oh.
No, I follow a lot of people. I really like to observe and listen in and watch what people are up to and what people are doing and that type of stuff. So I don't really have any favourites. I'm really honest. And I think that's a really sort of sitting on the fence answer. But there's nobody in particular that I look at and go, you're the person that everything you say is absolutely spot on, because I just think everyone's got different perspectives, and everyone's perspective actually in some way is sort of quite right. Bar a couple, there's a couple I think are complete pains in the backside. That's another story. But generally, I think people's perspectives are absolutely spot on in their world, and I think you can learn a lot from other people. So I like to go for a wider, holistic view rather than just focusing on one or two.
Like it. And then final question, if you had to give any advice to a recruitment business leader today, outside of joining TRN, what would that advice be?
What would that advice be? It's such a difficult one because we give so much advice out every day to recruitment leaders, and they're all going through such different journeys right now.
Pick one of your golden nuggets out.
Yeah, someone flying high. So I think, what's the one bit of advice? Build a machine, build an engine, build a machine. Imagine your recruitment company is a conveyor belt in a manufacturing plant, basically. So you could really fine tune it, play with it. That's it. So everything you do is all your processes are mapped out and measured. Someone joins your business, there's a process manual they can read and just learn how to do it. This is the way we do stuff around here. That's a really good point, actually. I'm sorry to long answer your question, but
right.
A lot of people have said, what should I do, Jen? The market's really tough. My first answer 18 months ago was just get the bloody playbook out and go back and do the basics brilliantly and consistently, because they will always work. They always will. If you haven't got the playbook, you haven't got anything to pull out to people and show people. So, one bit of advice is build your playbook, build your way of working, operate, turn it into a manufacturing, like an engine, and then just get people to live and breathe that way of working. There's too many people, I think, coming in trying to do different things all the time, when actually just focus on the one thing that works in your business brilliantly and consistently.
Doing the same things that have always been done might be really unsexy, but there's a reason why it worked once upon a time and why it will continue to work far off into the future, at least you hope, right?
There's some very unsexy recruitment companies out there doing some very boring marketplaces who have had an absolute stonking 18 months, I can tell you that. So sometimes unsexy is very sexy.
Absolutely spot on. James, that's been a real pleasure. If people want to follow you or get in touch anyway, where should they do it? LinkedIn, email, what works best for you?
Yeah, I'm fairly vocal and noisy on LinkedIn, so you can pretty much find me on LinkedIn anywhere. Or come on, what we do, a lot of people we invite people to come and have a look around TRN, Recruitment Network. So if anybody wants to come to a round table or come to one of our events, you're more than welcome to come along for free and have a look around and see what you think. That's about it, really nice and easy. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much there.
It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for your thoughts as well. It's been far more kind of like, I won't say holistic, but more like a bit more of a step back than what I expected coming into this, being completely frank. But I really enjoyed that. The chat about purpose and about the idea of this revolution, really good stuff. So thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. Thanks, Eric.